Hello, brothers and sisters. Raven here. Today we go into what Homestead Heritage calls the church. This definition, Ozzy really goes on and on and on. And it's even more gibberish than usual. Also, in this one, what he says about the corrupt definition, I can agree with. But not in what it says, in what he's trying to kind of portray. However, at the same time, I hate the way he does it. It's something I've noticed, and I have wanted to bring up because I wanted to make this more about logical, biblical reasons why what he's doing is incorrect. But this time, I've had enough. He is acting like an immature schoolroom bully. That's the kind of wording he uses. That's all this is. It's a childish insult. It's terrible the way he does this. There's nothing in here to really make it substantial. It just sounds like you're poking at them. Very frustrating. But you'll notice here in his corrupt definitions, it's not completely false, because you do see a lot of what he talks about of people in the church who are just there as some sort of practice. There's no real sincerity. It's more of just a sort of medical treatment almost. And I can say, yeah, he's got a point. There is too much of that. But what you'd think that would lead to into the next definitions, the biblical definitions, doesn't fix the problem. And you find out he's not really pointing at this stuff because of that issue. It's something else. But to start off with that, one thing I want to point out is one little part of his second definition. It says separation from the world and discipleship. Anything that would actually achieve biblical unity. Now, this thing of separation from discipleship, no. Yeah, there's not enough of it, but I wouldn't say there's anything in the churches that says separation from it. That doesn't fit. However, what's very bizarre about this is when he says anything that would actually achieve biblical unity, is he only talking about discipleship, or is he saying being in the world, being with the world, would bring that as well? It's very unclear here, which shows you his concern in this is not making this accurate, not making this correct, or to really explain this fully. No, his concern here is just to make them look bad. Look, all other churches look bad. That's his only concern. This kind of shows you how that's the case. But let's go on to the biblical definitions. Now, in these, I'm not going to go through all of them in detail. Basically, he's pushing more and more and more of what we've talked about a lot lately, and is one of their big things that they try to make sound better than what it is, which is get rid of your identity. Your only identity should be in their body, in the church, in what they are, Homestead Heritage. That's your identity. That's what they keep pushing. That's what they keep trying to force everybody to do, is get rid of themselves, which is what we see in each of these definitions. But there's one thing in particular in here I want to point out that's a very interesting part. If you're reading through this right now, there's one thing I hope is sticking out to you. Because it really shows, yes, this is not them talking about being born again. No, this is not real salvation. This is all about being rid of self and becoming something you're not. You should have no identity. Everything I've been saying is completely confirmed in these 3 words. Look at the 4th definition. The sole entity, capable of withstanding the authority and onslaught of the world. He's calling the church, the body, the sole entity. He is teaching a whole different form of the Trinity, only in this case, it's hundreds and hundreds in one instead of only 3 in one. But what I really want to get into is one particular definition. Before I go into that, I want to show a bit of what he's doing here, because most of these passages are very much out of place. They have nothing to do with this. In particular, take a look at Romans 7:3, which he mentions there in the first definition. You read that, it has nothing to do with this. I cannot make a connection no matter how hard I try to twist that passage. It makes no sense. But then there are others where it's taking out of context. The most obvious case would be down at the bottom, Ephesians 1:23. If you read that, you can't understand what it's talking about. Because what it's talking about is identified in verse 22. But he doesn't want you to see verse 22 because that's where it talks about Jesus being the head. And that's a concept whenever they use, they have to twist. Since he doesn't want to take the time here to do that, he's not going to list that verse. Those are the 2 things you see in these passages. However, the second one, that's what I want to show a big example of. The last reference he gives on definition 1 is 1 Corinthians 12, 11, and 18. Not 11 to 18, 11 and 18. Well, let's see what he wants us to read, then let's see what it says. 11 and 18 say, "But one and the same Spirit works all these things, distributing to each one individually as he wills. But now God has set the members, each one of them in the body, just as he pleased." Now again, they've been pushing this thing of this body, of this coming together, becoming this one identity, this one entity, as we just read, this sole entity. Well, here's why he doesn't like the rest of the verses in this. And watch, because this passage makes it so clear in the verse right after this. So let's go, 11 to 19. "But one and the same Spirit works all these things, distributing to each one individually as he wills. For as the body is one and has many members, but all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and have all been made to drink into one Spirit. For in fact the body is not one member, but many. If the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body?" If you guys have seen earlier videos, you might see the problem there with what he said in the past. "And if the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye, where would be the hearing? If the whole were hearing, where would be the smelling? But now God has set the members, each one of them, in the body, just as he pleased. And if they were all one member, where would the body be?" He ends this on that note that it can't be one member. It can't be this sole entity. That's what they're trying to do with this more than anything, is make this definition of the church this one singular entity so that you don't exist once you join them. You are gone. You are now them. Let's look at his last definition. God's final project for demonstrating to principalities and a dog-eat-dog world, his ultimate alternative for ordering society through trust, submission, unity, love, and wholeness of life under his headship. As we've seen them talk about multiple times, as we saw in their conference that we talked about before, what does he mean by under his headship? The leadership of Homestead Heritage. And note he capitalizes it. According to their teachings, they have that headship. They are God. We've shown that before. This definition is making it so that it is not about this community. It is not about this caring for one another and acting together as the different parts of the body. No, this is about you coming under them. Everybody being underneath this leadership of Homestead Heritage. Because they are this authority. They are this wholeness, this representation of God on earth. They are this Christ. And that it's this submission, as he says here, to them that makes you the church. No, the church should be all about the community. The helping of one another. The strengthening of one another. It should be about this relationship with one another and with the Lord. That's the church's body. That's what makes it what it is. They want to make it this headship that God has given them. He points out these falsehoods of the way the world sees the church, but not to fix it. To point you to an even worse one, in my opinion. That is based upon far worse teachings than many false prophets out there, because they are making themselves God. They don't want to get rid of your identity just because they don't like you, nor just because they want control. The ultimate reason is because they want this authority. They want this power. They want to be worshipped. I'll see you guys next time. God bless.
Well, Troop, you've polished your boots before everyone else. How on God's good earth did you accomplish that miracle?
I just did it exactly the way you told me to. Remove laces, pull tongue forward, apply polish, pull tongue backward, buff, replace laces, repeat. I did the same thing to make my bed and secure my footlocker.
Well, that's the most miraculous turnaround that I've ever seen. I want you to explain to these recruits how the worst soldier in the unit has managed to put them all to shame.
I just stopped thinking. I figured out that using my brain was the whole problem. Not just here, but my entire life. But if I just do exactly what I'm told and nothing else, then everything gets easy. It's not even a question of smart or dumb. You just turn yourself into a tool. I'm much happier that way. I'm the world's happiest tool.
You must be proud of yourself, son.
I don't know if I am or not. I'm waiting for you to tell me.